Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast. My name's Graham. I go by HamHocks42, and folks on the video will see my cat is all up in my business at the moment. This is Peas Blossom. She's here to say hello. You can probably hear her purring in the microphone. But that's not my only co-host today. I'm also joined by DamienF16. Damien, how's it going, man?
Well, I'm a lot less adorable than that beautiful animal that I see.
Don't sell yourself short.
But
okay,
fine. I'm here, I guess. I'm gonna get upstaged by her, but that's okay. I'm doing well. Yeah, busy, playing some Magic, just waiting for the kind of turnover of the RCQ season. I wanted to change from Modern to Standard. That would be great. And just waiting for that to happen, but still jamming Standard. This and that. How are you? What's up with you?
Doing all right. Just waiting for the ban announcement as of this recording. It hasn't come out yet. By the time you're listening to it, it probably has. Just waiting to see, what happens. I mean, I think the world has just accepted that Nadu's getting banned, even though we haven't seen any word from Wizards directly that would state that. But it's one of those, a more obvious call could not ever be made. So it's going to be really interesting to see what goes down tomorrow with that and see if anything else gets hit. Yeah.
I remember when Hogak deserved to be banned, and they didn't ban Hogak. They banned Bridge from Below, and everybody went, wait, what? So, I don't know. Is there a chance they ban Shuko?
I think that's a very real possibility. I think
you think so?
I think it's possible, and then people just bring their Lightning Greaves, and it's a little slower. You can't fetch it with there's a Saga, but whatever, we'll figure it out.
That's what I mean. They need to just ban the most offensive card. But we were doing a lot of talking about the bans, this week as well. And before we move off to other topics. It's funny. I think, we were talking about Pioneer and saying, like, what could fix it? I know we mentioned this last week, and we said, Amalia's a problem, and Sorin, I think, is a problem, and I don't know, Treasure Cruise probably needs to go. Yeah. But then I was talking to people over the week. You know what they should do in Pioneer, I think, is the best plan? Just a huge swath of bans, the way they did... when was that? 4 years ago, 2020, I want to say. Was it like when they banned Inverter? They banned like Walking Ballista and Inverter and Kethis and what else? They banned like a bunch of. They just went on a banning spree, right? They just had a huge bunch of bannings, and it was good. It that refreshed the format. I think that's what Pioneer needs. They need just like a swath of like a lot of bans, like a huge wave. Yeah. That would be crazy.
Well, and that was pretty clutch because in that scenario, the combo decks, like Inverter Truth was like the combo deck from what I understand. Right. And them kind of looking at the card pool and recognizing like, well, okay, if this like combo deck is going to disappear, well, this combo deck is not that much slower and that's just going to be the next thing. Exactly. And so they went all the way down the line and just like all of these combos that would be problematic. Let's just hit them all right now because this is not what we want the format to be. So just get them all out of here, which, I agree. That was a great way to handle it if the goal is to not have that kind of a play pattern in your format, So
we'll
if
see
they
what
got
happens.
if they got rid of Amalia and Treasure Cruise and some of these other enablers for some of these.
That'd be cool.
It'd be interesting to see how it shakes out. I would be very curious. I mean, does Greasefang all of a sudden step back in and become one of the things? I mean, I'm curious to see how it would shake out. Yeah,
it would be nice to see, kind of fair decks be a little bit better represented. Right. Like, I don't consider Phoenix to be really a fair deck because I think Treasure Cruise is just not a fair card. Like, it's a very busted card. But Lotus Field combo would probably jump back into that void and fill that gap. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I would be very surprised if they did, but you never know. Nobody knows really what is going to happen. So this should be interesting. We'll have a lot to talk about next week.
Absolutely.
But this week, a little bit of a slow, again, we're in this in-between time. We're kind of waiting for things to develop, with regard to Magic on Arena anyway. Standard in particular, we're kind of waiting for, like I said at the top of the show, the RCQ season to rotate back in. But in the meantime, we've been talking a lot about the spoilers coming out. There's been a few from Duskmorn, and then what got a lot of people really excited was... some of the spoilers from Foundations, and of course the announcement of this set that's coming out that's not like other sets. It's going to be legal for 5 years, for those of you who may be not aware, and it's going to be a lot of reprints. We don't exactly know. It's maybe some new cards as well. They didn't say anything, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ham, they didn't say it was going to be 100% reprints, did they?
No, they confirmed that it won't be 100% reprints. They actually had even previewed a couple of new cards that'll be included, but the new cards and kind of the whole design seems to be focused with a new player experience and a standard power level. So,
right.
So yeah, and but at the same time, I think it's safe to assume that it's going to be very heavily, a lot of reprints will be featured, and there are some. They actually have previewed a couple more since the last time we touched on it. Nothing too crazy. They pretty much just confirmed that there will in fact be a cat theme in the set, and that is absolutely going to be a thing. So neat.
Just don't give us a Johnny. Okay, Modern can have him. Please don't give us that insane busted Johnny. That is.
Oh, could you imagine if Johnny Nakano Pariah was in this? It was in Foundations. Oh
no.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here. This set is not going to be a power spiky set.
No.
This set is going to be very much like the core sets that many of us were used to playing over the years that they kind of did away with a few years back. They were your entry level, like you said, to onboard new players, like basic kind of strategies. They were there to kind of introduce evergreen mechanics like flying and trample and death touch and first strike and all this stuff. So this set is, I think that's the key word here is evergreen. And all the cards in this set, because they're going to be legal for 5 years, it makes sense for Wizards to print a set that has all these kind of evergreen cards that should always be legal in Standard. They should always be around. They keep having to jam them into sets. And it's like, how many sets do we need with Negate in it or Duress or, one of these kind of things?
Right.
They're gonna use this set.
If Duress isn't in this, like if Duress and Negate are not in this, I'm gonna be shocked because they have.
So
anyway, but
let's predict these things. So today, let's go over some predictions.
Yes,
and
we will absolutely get into that. Yeah. But as an example of kind of what they are showing us, since last time we talked, there's a card, Helpful Hunter is one that they previewed. It's a 1/1 for 1 and a white. It's a cat, and when it enters, draw a card. It's basically Spirited Companion, but a cat.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we're talking about. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's not quite as good as Spirited Companion. Different. If cats matter, it's slightly better. It's not an enchantment. So like, but it's filling that same role of just a 2-drop that enters and draws a card, and it's in white, which, we just lost with rotation with Spirited Companion. So this is them just saying that, white should have access to a small creature that enters and draws a card.
Everyone should have access to cats. They're adorable.
Agreed.
Everybody should. Okay.
And there's another one that they previewed that I'm really jazzed to see because this is also a cat that everyone should have access to. Savannah Lions will be an uncommon in Foundations. They are saying here it is. It's back as an uncommon in Standard. Savannah Lions will be Standard legal again.
From the past. Yep. I remember getting crushed back in the day as a kid by my friend's mono white deck. Savannah Lions, White Knight, and Crusade, and a bunch just crushed me, right?
Yep.
But at that time I'm just like, this is stupid. It's not fair. It's like they're too strong. This 1-mana 2/1. It was rare, I believe, wasn't it?
It was
in revised and stuff. It was a rare before. Mm-hmm. Wow.
No, I remember when I first started playing, it was about a $15 card, or it was at least 10. I remember it was. Because it was a legacy staple. If you were playing any kind of white aggro deck in Type 1 at the time. I mean, to be fair, I started in 2003, so this was 20 years ago now. But it was a chase rare back in the day because it was just if you wanted to do aggro. It was good. Dude, White has a Jackal Pup with no downside. This is crazy. Yeah, it's
exactly. So getting back to the Foundations thing, we're going to be looking at a lot of cards like this, but I want to preface this by saying, some of these things that I think what we're going to do is basically I'd like to go over every color, and Ham and I have each picked 5 cards from each color that we think should be in this Foundation set that are the most important cards in each color that they should reprint that kind of maybe define what traditionally the color does or stuff like that. Some of these I think, though, I'm going to preface and say that, the version that I'm recommending, they should print this kind of card, and it could be that exact, copy of that card or something like it. Now there's so many versions of Divination and Unsummon and, Giant Growth and all these things. Like, when we talk about these kind of things, we're speaking of basically a version of this. So maybe not the original, but something along those lines, right? So do you want to kick it off with White? We'll go Wooburg order, or how do you want to do it?
I got to be honest, I didn't do my homework very well. So, I mean, if we're going in Wooburg order,
what do you want to start with? We can start with anything you like.
I mean, the very first one that came to my mind, that I think it was an absolute staple in core sets back in the day, that I would like to see because I think Standard can handle it. And this might be a controversial pick, but I want to see Zombify come back.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I don't think they will, because I think that they've made a pretty clear stance that reanimation effects cost 5 mana. So Zombify,
Right.
if you're not familiar, it's a sorcery for 3 and a black. Return target creature card from your graveyard to play. So it's just reanimate a thing, but it's a 4-drop. In older formats, it's just way too slow, and even in Commander, it's just not very. It's just, the impact isn't great for what you get. But in a 60-card format, where on turn 3 you can channel a Trumpet and Carnosaur, being able to consistently pull it out on turn 4. That seems pretty cool to me. It seems very powerful.
Yeah. I could see
we
it.
have Rest in Peace and the Soul Guide Lantern.
Like
so
Soul Guide Lantern and stuff. Yeah, sure.
So
I think
why not?
I could see it. I could see them, or even just take Zombify and make it cost double black, like 2 black, 2 colorless.
Yeah, something like that would be like, I think would be perfectly fine.
Probably fine. Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But black, I think, we can start with black. Like I have a couple that I think are automatically going to be in this. I think every core set should have a Doomblade. I think that's the key card from black that every standard format needs. And there's a bunch of different versions of it, but I think just the classic Doomblade in this foundation set would be all we really need. And then, every other set you get some special one that can kill a slightly different variation of creatures, great. But Doomblade's one of the most important ones, and in the same vein, one of the other I don't have these in any particular order, but the 5 black cards I think should be in here are Doomblade. I think Disfigure. In the same vein, I think black needs to have a 1 mana shock variant, and we've seen Disfigure get reprinted a bunch of times. It is good, and I think having this and having shock in the format, like you get to target different things. This can kill indestructible creatures. This can kill things that, like the minus is sometimes relevant. And I think having an effect like this in the format is actually really important. And it's the reason you've seen Disfigure get printed a bunch of times. I think Doomblade and Disfigure are the kind of removal spells that I think should be evergreen, and they should be in this foundation set. After that, Sholdred's Edict. I think we need a good edict effect, and it's got to be cheap. And I think Sholdred's Edict's been the best edict we've seen, because the problem with a lot of these edicts is they're just not good enough if they're not, like even at instant speed, making them sack a creature is not always amazing. You'd much rather just Doomblade or whatever, go for the throat, what have you. But Sholdred's Edict actually proved that edicts can be good enough if you just make it, variable enough that you can constantly kind of always get what you want. You get that, huge creature, you get that token, or you get the planeswalker. I think they should have something like this always in standard. So those three black removal spells for me.
I like it. And so Sheoldred's Edict is your go-to, not something like Diabolic Edict or, one of the more kind of traditional edict effects.
Yeah, because those are weak. Those are too weak now, I think.
Sure.
A Diabolic Edict effect just isn't cutting it. I think it wouldn't be good enough for standard. I mean, even Shouldered's Edict doesn't see a ton of play in standard. And I think it waxes and wanes, but I think just having something like this that's better than Diabolic Edict and always available if we need, because hexproofs, I loathe that mechanic, and you got to have a pressure valve to turn when there's a big, huge hexproof scary thing in the format, dominating the format or whatever, or a planeswalker or what have you. I think Shouldered's Edict effect, just being able to hit planeswalkers and that kind of thing is better. But that was
I can absolutely get behind that. I think that's fantastic. And I completely agree, especially actually on the point of Sheoldred's Edict, the fact that I can hit a planeswalker, nowadays that's so much more impactful than it used to be. I mean, I know I've gotten a couple of sideboards and I bring it in against walkers is the main use case.
Yeah. And the fourth, I'll just go over my 5 and then you can tell me all yours if you want.
Yeah,
the fourth one I think we should always have access to, and I think I didn't realize how important it was until it rotated out, was Deadly Dispute, aka Little Score. Deadly Dispute is so good. It's not a broken card. It's a common, but just enough value to make this card just be such a good glue piece in a lot of these like sacrifice decks and even reanimation stuff. And there's a bunch of different decks that played it. I played a bunch of it when it was in standard. I think this kind of card should always be legal. Black should always have a card like this in standard. I think it'll facilitate a lot of different sack archetypes and aristocrat style archetypes and you name it, and just have them always be something that's possible, something that's on the table. Like losing Deadly Dispute really killed off those kind of decks. I played with this, and you remember the Strixhaven, the bat that would learn when it's sacked, and we had Gas.
I Twitch and
I Twitch, and there was a gas that died and made a treasure.
Shambling gas.
Shambling gas,
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always those
Shambling
kinds
gas
of creatures,
on 1 and
right?
Shambling gas on 1 and a Deadly Dispute on 2, and so you're opening up turn 3 with 5 mana available. That was nuts. Yeah, that felt
sweet.
Good.
So I like Deadly Dispute a lot. I think they should always have something like this. And again, it's what I prefaced, before we started. It doesn't have to be this card, but something along those lines. We've seen other variations on that, but I think Deadly Dispute's kind of the best one. It's by far the most powerful and the one that, I want to play the most.
I completely agree. They have printed a couple of variants of this. I mean, we have 2 separate printings of Corrupted Conviction in standard legal sets these days. So
really?
that's something. It's more like Village Rights, because instead of paying 2, sacrificing thing, and then getting some material as well, this is just pay 1, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. But there was also one from Ixalan that had... the name is escaping me right now, but it was 1 and a black. You sacrifice something and then draw 2 cards and make a map token. That one... is I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. That one kind of meets that same Fanatical Offering is what it's called. It's a similar design, but the map token is significantly worse than the treasure, so it's a notable downgrade. And so it's pretty narrow.
I'd like to see actual Deadly Dispute or something along those lines. I think that would be sweet to have just always in standard. And then the last one, of course, the black cards. It's probably the most reprinted black common, Duress. And we talked about it at the start of the show. You always have to have a Duress. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly Duress. It could be Dreams of Steel and Oil style Duress, or it could be, something slightly different. There was one from like New Phyrexia or something as well that was like, choose a creature or a planeswalker. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a bunch of it. Just a 1 black mana sorcery that lets you look at the hand and take a range of cards. I think always has to be in standard. So those are my 5. Some of the ones that I was like, honorable mention, like Phyrexian Arena. I would really love for a card like that to always be in standard. I think black should always have that kind of just like slow card draw. Some formats we have Dark Confidant. We're like right now we have a Dark Confidant bat that has offspring and everything. You could use Darkstar Augur. Is that what it's called?
Darkstar Augur. That's the one. Yep.
But we don't always have this. Just having a 3 mana and an enchantment. I mean, there's arguments for enchantment over creature, but just always having that Phyrexian Arena. It's such an important part of the heavy black deck sideboards, especially when they try and play against control and stuff. I think always, but didn't quite make the list. I don't know. So those are my 5: Doomblade, Disfigure, Shouldered's Edict, Deadly Dispute, and Duress with Phyrexian Arena on the bubble.
Awesome.
What do you think? What are your black cards here?
Well, I absolutely agree with all of these points. I think it'd be I'll be shocked, like genuinely shocked if Duress isn't in it. Like it's become a meme at this point how often that card gets reprinted. I mean, you hear it talked about on Arena all the time. It's like, I have 12 different Duress arts, and so yes, just I hope they just pick their favorite and just lock it in, and so they don't have to worry about it moving forward. I'm all for it. Now I'm curious if they go with Doomblade, because they've definitely moved away from the color being tied to how soft something is to removal. They've been avoiding that, but I wonder if maybe the inclusion. I mean, it'd be weird to print them so close to each other. But yeah, I feel like Fell is kind of in that same wheelhouse. And I do believe they have confirmed that Hero's Downfall will be in it. So, but that's that's replacing, that's a souped up murder. But, so, okay. But 3 mana versus 2 mana is a significant difference. Yeah,
exactly. And instant versus sorcery to me is a significant difference. I think Fell, I would be pretty disappointed if that was the kind of evergreen removal spell that black got. I think it's way worse than giving us any number of, go for the throat or
I was about to ask
shoot the sheriff or, there's a million of them.
I could see go for the throat getting locked in here, because with it being in Brothers War, it's going to be rotating, sooner than a lot of the other pieces we have. So this I could see. You know what? Actually, now that I think about it,
I think the most evergreen version of this card, honestly, what they should put is Infernal Grasp. I think that actually fits the black color the best, and it's just the most kind of wide open removal. Like there's no, just pay 2 life, sure, and then just hit all the creatures. I guess it doesn't hit Planeswalker or whatever, but Bitter Triumph is excellent, and God, I play so much of it in standard right now. But Bitter Triumph is too good, I think, for evergreen. It shouldn't be always available. It's almost too good. But I can see Infernal Grasp, So some kind of Doomblade effect, anyway, But was there anything that you thought that should go on the list that I missed, or what else was?
That's definitely covering it. It's funny. I want to live in a world. I'm kind of hoping that we see something like Knight's Whisper or Ambition's Cost. These like one-off, kind of Phyrexian Arena style effects where you draw cards and then lose some life.
Yeah.
Sign in Blood. Oh, Sign in Blood. That's the one. That's the something like that would
Knight's
be.
Whisper is probably too good. I think Sign in Blood would be fine. Like just double black versus black and colorless is a big difference.
It's pretty significant. Yeah.
I think Sign in Blood's probably more fair. I could definitely see that. Yeah, I forgot about. This is the other thing. There are thousands of cards that have been printed in all the core sets and other things over the years. Like there are so many other black cards you could put on this list. It's almost impossible to narrow it down to 5.
Oh my goodness, yes.
But anyway, that's also, what I think. But
the other one that I would have absolutely shouted for and really pushed for is Blood Artist or some flavor of Blood Artist, or a Zulaport Cutthroat style effect. And it turns out they're actually giving us a new one. Called Vengeful Blood Witch. This is another one that kind of snuck in while we weren't paying attention. Vengeful Blood Witch is a vampire warlock 1/1 for 1 and a black. Whenever this creature or another creature you control dies, target opponent lose 1 life, you gain 1 life. So it's a crime. It's synergized with all that stuff, and it's the Blood Artist text just on a 1/1 instead of a 0/1.
It even triggers off itself. Yeah, some of these creatures don't trigger off themselves, and this one does. Yeah, that's quite good. I didn't even see that get put in there. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's another kind of like linchpin piece for that Aristocrats deck. You need this kind of card. So having this always available, just basically what we're looking for here, we're hoping they print, is stuff like this that opens up a bunch of archetypes. That's what you're doing with a set like this. You want to make a bunch of archetypes, as many archetypes as we can, as viable as we can, and then go nuts. Let the players kind of figure it out and brew and cook and whatever. But
I love it.
So that's black.
Yeah.
Let's jump.
Black. What color do you want to move on to next? What are you thinking?
Let's go to white. We'll jump to the opposite.
Perfect.
Polar opposite.
I love it.
So, do you want to go first, or should I?
Actually, the one that comes to my mind first is. I would love to see a Swords to Plowshare style effect, but I don't think we're ever going to see that in Standard again, right? Because that's insane. So if they gave us like a 2-mana Swords to Plowshares or something like that, like all right, or maybe Path to Exile, maybe that'd be good. Or at the very least, give us some rotation insurance on Laydown Arms. Because I feel like that's a very fair version of that card that is good 1-mana removal in a heavy white deck if you have a lot of planes. It's just, it does the thing and it's quite strong in doing it. So I would kind of like to see that locked in moving forward because I like it. It seems decent.
It's very close to one of the cards I put on the list. One of my top 5 I think they should reprint is Elspeth's Smite, which is the same kind of effect. A 1-mana way to deal with, a creature, but it can't be unconditional removal. Like Laydown Arms is way better. Like if they give us that would be very interesting. But even just always having like a 1-mana white lightning bolt that can only hit an attacker or whatever is so important for a lot of the white based decks to combat aggro, right? So I agree. A 1-mana white removal spell seems
And actually, according to Scryfall here, again, good news. And you can tell I haven't done my homework enough. But Elspeth's Smite, it was actually spoiled in.
Wow,
it is going to be in Foundations. You called it.
Okay, I swear, I didn't know. I haven't looked at any of these
still don't
yet.
know, but this one, the majority of these we still don't know. But this one,
we're on the right page.
So got an update somewhere, and even in Scryfall, we don't even have the English version of it, but they did confirm it will be in there. So
Elspeth's Smite was one of the big ones. My 5 were Elspeth's Smite. Disenchant, of course. You need a disenchant effect.
Yep.
So now, when I say disenchant, I don't mean it. I mean, hell, you could put literal disenchant in here, I guess.
DCOG.
But I mean something like disenchant. A 2-mana white spell, blows up enchantment or artifact, or maybe and one other thing if they want to, power creep it up to 2024 standards. I don't know, like 24 level. But something along these lines, like 2-mana instant white, blow up, non-creature permanent, basically. You need something like that, I think.
100%.
Also, Rest in Peace, and that's a big one. And I know a lot of people are just like, they can't always have Rest in Peace. It's like, I don't know. I think, I've been playing Scrimming Emergence and like Soul Guide Lantern, Tranquil Frillback, Kutzil's Flanker, these cards, they don't cut it. They one-off graveyard removal often is not enough. They either need to draw multiples or they need to have this Rest in Peace. And that's one of the only ways to truly, combat. If graveyard decks get too good, there's not a lot of graveyard hate that's this powerful, but so I don't know. This is a push. This would be a huge reprint in a set like Foundations, but I feel like they need something like this, some real banger to wipe out graveyards, and I just can't think of anything else other than Rest in Peace that does it. But I don't know. Maybe there's a variation on this that would be a little bit less potent, and maybe a little bit less. I don't know. You can just crush graveyard decks with this, right? So yeah,
you can. And personally, I am 100% here for this. I'm a graveyard enthusiast. I love digging into my graveyard. I hate playing against Rest in Peace, but if them having this be evergreen and standard means they can give me my zombifies and my buried alives occasionally or something, then okay, let's talk. You know, like if that's if you give us the tools to combat the graveyard strategies, then maybe they'd be more willing to let us play graveyard strategies more frequently, rather than just kind of have a very light hand on those reprints. I think, a Rest in Peace in there would be fine. I wouldn't be surprised if they give us something like Unlicensed Hearse, or maybe would Relic of Progenitus be a good fit? I don't know. We're talking artifacts now. We're not necessarily in white.
I mean, maybe that's better, but maybe you're right. Yeah. Maybe Artifact Graveyard Hate is better, just to keep it, across all colors, like give all colors access to this. I'm sure they will. Like, I didn't even go into artifacts. I just did 5 cards for each color here. But that's actually really good. Yeah, I'm sure they'll put something like Soul Guide Lantern or Relic of Progenitus or whatever in here.
Or Tormod's Crypt, maybe. I don't know.
Something like that.
Something like that.
0 mana artifacts might be too good just because they're 0, though. You got to be careful.
That's fair.
Not even about the graveyard hate. Just like you could do some crazy, Clear Steel Paladin nonsense. I don't know, like crazy.
Well, I think the last time Tormod's Crypt was legal in standard was when Tybalt's Trickery showed up. So yeah, maybe they're not going to give that to us again. But,
well,
anyway.
I think some kind of graveyard hate in white is good. We'll see.
Agreed.
I think one of the other things they need to give white, the 4th card on my list here, is Glorious Anthem. And like right now we have the red-white one that pings when creatures enter, the War Leader's Call or whatever it's called. But I think they should always have some kind of Glorious Anthem effect in white. An enchantment that just pumps your team. Maybe it's not 3 mana. Maybe it's like 2. I don't know. You can't push this too hard, but Glorious Anthem, I don't know if it's good enough for standard anymore, but like War Leader's Call is a nice twist on it. Okay, the creature's ETB and ping, something like that. Some version of an Anthem effect has to always be around. And Virtue of Loyalty is going to rotate, and War Leader's Call is going to rotate. And so just having one of these in the core, the foundation set, I think is pretty important. But what do you think about the Anthem effect?
I completely agree with you on that. I think balancing Glorious Anthem is a tricky proposition because 3 mana it doesn't do enough. Like, fun fact, we actually have a better Glorious Anthem in standard right now, and it sees 0 play. In the Trenches from Brothers War is in the Trenches is 1 white, all creatures get +1/+1, and it has this activated ability that can remove something in the late game. So like it's strictly better Glorious Anthem, and it still doesn't really see any meaningful play. There is a gold one in Foundations of the Anthem of Champions, which is green-white.
Okay, right.
Creatures you control get +1/+1. So it's the similar idea, but it only costs 2. But they kind of tempered it, or kind of balanced that by adding a color to the mix. So you're not in mono white, but it gives you something. Meanwhile, if we're talking Glorious Anthem style effects, I mean, Wedding Announcement saw a ton of play, and that that ultimately was a 3 mana Anthem. It did some other stuff on its way there, so there were a couple of turns of value first, which made all the difference. But it can be done.
I mean, I think, like you said, like in the Trenches doesn't see play because it's overshadowed by War Leader's Call. But once those, War Leaders rotates, I guess they probably all rotate at the same time. But I get, you're right. There's going to be multiple anthems legal, but I think we just need like a baseline anthem so that if there is a gap, we still have something to fill that role. You know what I mean? If there's a gap between sets where we don't print one of these kind of effects. But I totally forgot about this card. It's been around for months and months, years now. Brothers War, and we haven't seen it really at all in standard.
Not really. And it's a mythic too, so like you didn't even see it in draft. Yeah. Yeah,
right. I think about my last card. So it was my 5. Well, I'll say the last one first. And I know a lot of people are probably not going to like this, but I think Wizards needs a big red button in Foundations, a big sweeper. And I'm not talking about Day of Judgment. We've already seen that get spoiled, and that's great. 4 mana sweeper is another. I didn't put it on the list because we already had this spoiled. And we need like a planar cleansing in standard. And Farewell was too good. Farewell exiling was actually like that was ridiculous. That was too good.
Okay,
but just
I was afraid that's where you were going. So, but
no,
yeah.
not farewell. So planar cleansing is fine. It's powerful, but it's very expensive. It's hard to cast. It's harder to cast than farewell. The exile is not here. It's only destroy. So
Right.
things will get around this. There'll be, things will come back from the graveyard and whatever. And it doesn't hit graveyards. Very important as well.
Yeah,
but I
it
think
doesn't hit graveyards. Yeah, it's destroy all non-land permanents for 3 white, for anyone who's not familiar with the card. And yeah, so it doesn't exile. It's not modal. It's going to hit everything no matter what. Yeah, this is... I completely agree. I like this idea.
I think they should have one of these always in standard. Just a big reset button that's always there. It's kind of annoying to cast, and it's heavy on the white and whatever. And it doesn't always, wipe everything if they have vehicle, or I guess no, it would wipe vehicles. But if they have something indestructible or something like that, maybe. But yeah, I just think this is kind of an important, again, we're talking about pressure valves here and making sure that there's always a way to deal with big, ridiculous strategies that dump a bunch of permanents on the battlefield and everything. You need this kind of effect, I think, to, again, prop up late game control archetypes. Like, this is all about creating as many archetypes as we can, and control needs something like this in a lot of standard formats of the past. It's needed this kind of card, and it misses it when it doesn't have it. I think this is the kind of card that should be in Foundations, and it was last printed in M20. I mean, you can tell it's a foundational card by them putting it in a core set.
Exactly.
We'll see. So those are my 5. Disenchant, Elspeth Smite, Rest in Peace, Glorious Anthem, and Planar Cleansing. And of course, there's a million more. Did I miss? Is there any you can think of that I maybe overlooked? Or
a couple that I don't know. I definitely have 1 or 2 that I want to bring up to just kind of chat through. But like on Planar Cleansing, I'm kind of amazed at how clean this would be, because things like Dawn's Truce right now are really struggling because all the sweepers are exile. And so like giving my stuff indestructible does nothing. Well, all of a sudden, if one of the premier wipes or one of the top end wipes that control is leaning on is is a destroy effect, great. All of a sudden those kind of protection effects are in play. And speaking of protection effects, actually an effect that I'm a big fan of that I don't see enough of, and the card I'm going to bring up is probably too good, but protection spells for your team. So, there's obviously effects like Teferi's Protection that Commanders players know. I think that's a bit too much. Yeah. But what about something like Ghostway, which for those who aren't familiar, it's an instant for 2 and a white. Exile each creature you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their control under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So for 3 mana at instant speed, your team disappears for the remainder of the turn. The idea is if somebody tries to sweep the board, you can pay 3 mana and save your team. How do we feel about something like that? Yeah. Is that a foundational card? I think personally, I think it would be fine in standard, but do we want it in standard for 5+ years? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It does do some broken stuff with ETBs. If you like these days, everything ETBs. So I don't know. This might actually be too good in some decks. I don't know what kind of deck would play this, but yeah, if you could just get a ton of value, like we have Atraxa still in standard. We have
and they're not done printing huge crazy ETBs. Yeah.
The Vaultborn Tyrant, and like can you imagine this? This is, I don't know. But that's win more. I mean, I don't think any of those, Calamity decks would put Ghostway in their deck. Usually you're just winning as soon as you slam the Calamity and crew with the Vaultborn or whatever it is. But maybe. I didn't even think about a card like this. Sure, maybe something like that. Protect your team type card. I could see that being evergreen.
And they could get interesting.
Dawn's Truce. Yeah.
Right, and they can get interesting alongside like Werefox Bodyguard or Brutal Cathar style removal effects, where it's like, okay, I'm going to exile them, you get your thing back. Oh, now they died to your sweeper. Now my stuff comes back. It can get.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Like you can do some interesting shenanigans. Yeah. I know I've had a lot of fun with these kinds of effects at instant speed. So I think something like that. And speaking of, I mean, would it make sense if I'm just kind of stuck on Blink at the moment? Would something as simple as like Ephemerate be, or again, are we talking too good because the Blink strategies would become awfully strong?
I mean, Ephemerate is very powerful. Like it's modern level powerful.
Sure.
I mean, it was a Modern Horizons card, right? So
right.
I think it would be too good, but I think you're right in the in this vein, we should have something like we should have some kind of blink for cheap, one white maybe, or one white, one colorless. Yeah, one white is ideal, but the rebound is almost too much. If it was,
yes, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, if they didn't want to put rebound on it, I totally get that. But some kind of, I think a 1 mana,
blink
white
effect, yeah.
or blue, maybe that's too much to ask. I don't know, maybe, but I think some 1 mana blink spell would be pretty fantastic. And these effects need to be instant. I think that's really important because we've had a couple of sorcery speed blink spells, and they have to be pushed to the moon to be even considerable. Like Splash Portal right now is pretty darn good when you combine it with frogs that can maximize the value. And at the very least, it's blink a thing, draw a card. Like that's what you need to have if you're going to be doing it on your turn. But at instant speed, you can get creative. So I don't know. I would like to see something like this. Maybe tone it down a little bit from pure ephemerate, but
something like that. Yeah, you're right. It does feel like it's part of White's identity at this point. That kind of effect, right? So yeah, I'd like to see that. So that's the white stuff. Let's go. I guess blue. Blue is next, but
blue works. I have one very strong opinion on this, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's on your list. There's one card right now that we are missing in standard. Rotation just happened, and we lost a version of it, and we don't have it right now, and it hurts. And that's Unsummon.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna put. I have it on my list as well.
I figured it was on the list because, we have Into the Floodmaw right now, which is a 1 mana bounce a thing, but you can't bounce your things, which is a huge difference. So Unsummon, just 1 mana bounce a creature. That's such a valuable effect, and we had Fading Hope in the Innistrad sets that recently rotated. And I don't know about you, but man, I abused Fading Hope. That was it was one of my go-tos because if you need to buy some time against an aggressive deck. It was fantastic. And could you imagine right now against Prowess? It'd be fantastic.
I played the hell out of Vapor Snag back in the day in Blue-White Delver in Standard, and that card was insane. That card, it was a 4 of it alongside Snapcaster, Delver, Mana Leak, and it was just 1 mana, and it made them lose life. And
love it.
So so again, I have this on my list as well. I just put Unsummon, but what we're really saying here, Ham and I, is something in this vein. Take Unsummon and bring it up to 2024 power level, and let's give it to us. Whether it's Vapor Snag, maybe it does damage, maybe it bounces any non-land permanent. That's probably too good. But
we have that effect. We have that effect at 2 mana for a couple of things, and I think that's where that
maybe
belongs.
That's better.
Yeah. I don't know.
Some kind of Unsummon.
Some kind of Unsummon, would Fading Hope. Do they just bring us Fading Hope back? Because, that's a power crept Unsummon right there, and I feel like that was fine. It played well.
And saw a lot of play, and nobody, it sucks when your 5-drop gets Fading Hoped, but you're just like,
sure.
It's a card in Standard. It doesn't feel broken. Nobody's complaining about losing to it or anything. So, they definitely always need something like this. So I'm very confident that we're going to see an Unsummon effect for 1 mana, instant speed, blue, bounce a thing. And then maybe there's some icing on the cake. I don't know, whether it's Scry or lose a life or what have you.
Right.
So I think that was number 1 on my list as well. Number 2, a card that I played a ton is Think Twice. I was thinking of there always has to be a cheap blue draw spell, and Divination just isn't good enough. It's just not good enough these days. And most Divinations they do print are they're 2 mana if you have a wizard, or they're 2 mana if you have a flying creature. You're just paying 2 to draw, or Chart a Course, something like that. But I think Twice, I like it the best. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I feel like it's the most powerful because you can self-mill it and still flash it back. You can, it's cheap, it's instant speed. It just does exactly what you want a lot of times in a control deck, or even in a self-mill kind of style deck, spells-based deck. So I think I would love for them to print something like this and just make it evergreen. It's been reprinted already a couple times, and it's just a good, solid draw spell. Now,
perfect.
Yeah. You could put Divination or something in there, or Chart. Divination again, I just feel like isn't good enough. It would have to be a version of Divination that's again power crept to today's standards. So maybe it's Chart a Course or something that's just straight up 2 mana. But I think Twice is perfect, and I would love to see that card just be evergreen. I think it should always be in Standard.
Yeah. I dig it. Well, and on top of that, we have a lot of Storm payoffs in Bloomborough at least, and like maybe that's an archetype that they're thinking about moving forward. So if cost reduction is a standard feature, this plays really well with those, and and the nostalgia factor, you touched on that. That is a selling point for this, because this is a new, the Foundations is kind of intended to be a foundational set to get players into paper. I'm assuming that they're looking at, current Arena players who don't have a paper collection, giving them an opportunity to, do a couple of drafts and be able to build standard decks and actually play at their local store. And then there's also new players in general. You want to be able to get new players on board and kind of dovetail them into competitive decks relatively smoothly. And so having something that was... I think that's really touches on what I think a lot of these reprints ought to be. Things that were top of the class at a time when things were a little slower. Because now everything's a lot faster, so you can get people in with a nostalgia factor. So these older players all of a sudden have something in the set that can make them happy too.
Yeah, and
and they're not going to break the
art.
format. Yeah.
And make it nice. Give us some alternate versions with full art or new art or, some goofy foil that looks all confetti or whatever. Just give it, because that's the other thing, is the financial aspect of this set. I know a lot of collectors are not going to want to buy boxes of Foundations if it's mostly like evergreen, like core set or core level, crap, basically, for standard. But you put in a bunch of alt art and different versions of these kind of, like you said, staples from years gone by, and people want them for their EDH decks and whatever else, then... that's one way to do it. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But I just from a format perspective and stuff, I would love to see this card come back. So unsummon, think twice. I also think the third blue card for me was, I don't know which version you could print here, but something like Clear the Mind. Clear the Mind was a blue sorcery that put your graveyard back into your deck. Blue has a lot of cards that put your graveyard back into your deck, right back to alpha with Time Twister, right? And I think there always needs to be something like this in standard. It doesn't have to be this. It could be like, put 3 spells back. Like right now we have a version of this that's 3 mana, put, 3 or 4 spells, or 3 or 4 cards back in your deck, and then look at the top 4, put a card in your hand. And I can't remember the name. Starts with a W. Anyway, if we have something like this, there's a bunch of versions of this. I'm just saying they need to print. I think they should print something like this. The standard should always have this kind of effect available. So shuffling your graveyard back in and drawing a card, or shuffling 4 spells back in and then looking at the top 3 and putting one in your hand, or whatever it is. I would love to see that always be around. I know when this rotated, I was like, oh, don't we have some like effect like this? You're putting together a combo deck and you're like, I just need one of these kind of effects because I'm gonna run out of win conditions. What if I mill all my own whatever it is? Just having this is huge, and I think it should always be in standard. But I don't know how you feel about that.
I dig it. Well, and you know what? If they're gonna do something like this, so. On the one hand, I think having this kind of an effect allows for some really interesting deck building, and you can have a lot of fun, doing those kind of things. It does open the door to the just sweeper counterspell stall decks, which they kind of give control a bad name, to be completely honest, because those aren't control decks, those are just time waster decks.
Prison decks,
and so being able to loop your graveyard like that does allow people to try to do that and lock people into hour-long best of 1 games on Arena. And I don't have much patience for that, but that's an abuse of power. It's not the card's fault. So honestly, if they give us something like that,
maybe
Clear the Mind I'm okay with, or if they wanted to give us, you mentioned Time Twister, they've added that style of effect onto cards like Midnight Clock, which, that in and of itself, Rusko is a problem, but that's its own discussion. But,
Commit to Memory was another one, same kind of thing,
Exactly. That kind of an effect I have no problem with. Shuffle the graveyard in, draw a card or so. Cool. I like that idea. And I think Clear the Mind's probably a great example of that. As long as they don't lock Devious Cover Up into that setup, because that's the one where
you shuffle back.
You shuffle all that stuff back and counter a spell as you do it, and so that's one where that is a staple in those stall decks that I'm not a huge fan of. So I personally don't love that card. It's one example of this kind of effect, but Clear the Mind I think is great. I'm 100% on board with this.
Like that.
Yeah. Something like that would be very,
the Future,
very good.
I think it was called Witness the Future. I don't know. There's something like that in standard right now. But
I think you're right. Yeah.
But something like that should always be in standard. Witness doesn't put your whole deck back. Yeah, this is the one that shuffles 4 cards back, and then you impulse. So something like this,
Mm-hmm.
it should always be around. I think that's one of my big blue cards that should always be in foundations, I think.
Yeah,
And this one, a lot of
I'm here for it.
people. Well, before I get to my last one, maybe the most
Okay.
controversial one. The other one I'd like to see is blue should always have a big X draw spell. We've seen,
Ooh.
right back again to Alpha. We've got Brain Geyser.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years we've had Stroke of Genius and Blue Sun Zenith and all these kind of things. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Yeah.
there should always be an effect like this. Right now we have Silver Scrutiny, and I think Silver Scrutiny is very good. I think Silver Scrutiny should be evergreen, something like that. An
Mm-hmm.
instant speed draw 3, great, or just boom, big draw, X
Go
for
huge.
big draw.
Mm-hmm.
Blue should always have this oof big draw, and I think this is probably too much, but it should be target player draws.
Ooh.
I've
I
killed
like
a lot of
that.
people with Blue Sun Zenith. It's one of my favorite win cons in Commander to just deck the table and then just like I never deck because I make them draw all of their deck
Yes.
and then I
I
win, right?
I love this. Honestly,
And
I wouldn't be
yeah,
mad seeing Blue Suns in there
I want
personally,
I
but
want like
yeah.
a Silver Scrutiny variant that says
Mm-hmm.
target player draws. Once Shouldered rotates, but with Shouldered and stuff in the format, maybe that's too good. I don't know.
Maybe.
Just fireball your opponent, but if once it rotates, or maybe not target player, like even just the blue player draws a bunch of cards. I think there should always be a big blue X draw spell in Standard. So again, there's a lot of options here. It can look like Scrutiny, Silver Scrutiny. It can look like like something like Blue Sun Zenith, I think is probably too good, but something like that targets each player, sorcery speed maybe instead of instant speed or what, whatever you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, even New Capenna had one that didn't make any waves whatsoever.
Yeah.
Even the score, which I know a lot of people
Right.
thought that was going to be a thing. In older formats, because it costs blue less if an opponent's drawn 4 or more cards in the turn. So if somebody brainstorms on their own turn, it's just X draw X cards at instant speed, which is a cool idea.
Instant. Yeah.
But it's just awfully narrow and not
in
not
Standard. Nobody's
in Standard. I never
turn.
once saw this card hit a stack in Standard. So
But they should have something along those
like
lines.
this.
I think
Yeah,
every
100%.
single every Standard rotation should have something like this. So put it in Foundations, right?
Yeah,
And
I dig it.
the last but definitely not least,
Ooh.
and this is the one that a lot of people, complain about, and it's something that when I mention it, people are like, "Oh, whoa, that is, wait a second, now that's too far. You can't, no, Mana Leak."
Yes,
They should reprint Mana Leak. Mana Leak should be in Standard forever. It was too good. Aaron Forsyth went on the record and said we should have never printed this into a core set at Common. It was a mistake. This is back when Delver was the best deck for months and months and months, and it wasn't even close. And people said there were other decks that were great decks, but no, it was always Blue-White Delver. It was the best the entire time. And Mana Leak was a big part of that. Snap Mana Leak. Like, it was so frustrating to play against because you just get that Mana Leak snap back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So my Stronghold Mana Leaks are sitting in my box over there. They've been gathering dust for quite a long time, and I want to dust those bad boys off. Now, I think for the haters who are saying this is too good, and Wizards has gone on the record, this was many years ago, but they said we're never going to print this again. That was many years ago. And here we are, post Oko, post Uro, post all the crazy, powerful nonsense that we've had to ban out of Standard. I think Mana Leak isn't that scary anymore, and I think it should be reprinted, and I think it's an important piece of the metagame. It's an important balancing tool, and it makes Standard better. I know people don't like getting their spells countered. I get it. But it's just like Legacy. You need force of will to balance the format. Otherwise, people get away with way too much nonsense. They printed No More Lies. It's clear that we can have a Mana Leak type card. No More Lies is better than Mana Leak, right? I mean, it exiles. That's huge.
In Azorius decks, absolutely.
And,
yeah.
And it's got this downside of being blue and white, which does suck. So give us just a basic like Mana Leak. We had, Make Disappear was an important part of Standard the whole time it was legal, and then No More Lies kind of superseded it. Now, just, No More Lies will rotate, and we need something always like that at 2 mana, not cancel with like, if you tap an artifact, it's cheaper, or if you have this, it's cheap. No, just give us Mana Leak, and let's be done with it, and then we'll be able to put a kind of a balance on the insane 3-drops that are just every set just churning out better and better. 3 is the magic number. That's where I really
Yes.
feel like the most powerful cards reside in Standard, and that's the turn when people are playing a card that can snowball by itself and win the game. Whether it's an enchantment or a planeswalker or an artifact or a creature, all of them, so many of them cost 3. In the last Standard, it was Wedding Announcement, it was Rafine, it was Fable of the Mirror Breaker, it was Gix, it was, now we have Preacher of the Schism and Urabrask's Forge and the Innkeeper, or the other talent, Caretaker's Talent, and there's so many good 3-drops. 3 is the magic number, and when you lose the die roll and you don't have an answer to the super powerful 3-drop that's going to run with the game, that feels worse than when you get your spell countered by Mana Leak. You need something like this to balance it. Anyway, that's my defense of Mana Leak.
A year ago, I would have been with the haters and saying, "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. This is not a standard power level card." But now I couldn't agree more, because those 3-drops that we're looking at, I mean, if you come packing with a lot of damage-based removal, Preacher of the Schism has 4 toughness. It gets around a lot of those cheap versions. Urabrask's Forge is an artifact. Getting rid of artifacts requires a lot of specific tools right now, and that's something you may not have access to. So we haven't seen Control be very strong for a very long time now, and a lack of a good 2-mana interaction that is generically strong is, I think, the reason. Make Disappear was fine, but it wasn't good, and I think something like this would, you've referred to it as subpar, and I completely agree. Yeah, it just, it was serviceable for, for a little bit, but we've also only seen cards get more powerful, and Cavern of Souls has gotten reprinted and whatnot, so it's not like counter spells are a huge, like a genuine problem. They're a perceived problem, but they're not an actual problem. And so I think that they need a little bit of a boost in the early game, and I think this would be perfect.
Yes, absolutely. I think that a lot of people don't fully appreciate the difference between pay 2 versus pay 3. It's a small, obviously, increment. It's 1 mana more. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But again, this is Magic, and I've talked many times on this podcast and on my stream and elsewhere about how just 1 tick of the dial is a huge deal in Magic, whether it's 1 point of toughness extra or 1 colorless mana more or whatever. Them paying 3 versus 2, Make Disappear has been reprinted a ton. We've seen Quench. We've seen, all these kind of miscalc effects. They're all 2 mana and they say pay 2. None of them have been good enough. Make Disappear was finally, good enough because you could sack that creature and kind of turn it into a hard counter. But we've had these kind of effects get printed so many times and they're never good enough for Standard. It's clear that the difference between paying 2 and paying 3 is night and day. None of these see play. And then as soon as No More Lies gets printed, bam, it's a 4 of. And, you were saying Control wasn't good. You're right, for a long time. But just before rotation, Blue-White Control was arguably the best deck in the format. Yeah, like right at the end of that 3-year Standard, Blue-White was very good. And it sucks that, it took that and it took a 2 mana, pay 3, unless if you don't pay 3, it gets countered, kind of counter spell like Mana Leak to make Blue-White good enough, but that's exactly my point here. You need that pay 3, not pay 2. Pay 2 is just not cutting it. Even Make Disappear, which was there, like compromise between, here's a 2 mana, pay 2 counter spell that's never going to see play, but we'll give it this little bump so that, is that going to be good enough? Yeah, people played it when it was legal or when it was around, but it wasn't, great, like you said. For that reason, Control was just not existent, right? So anyway, Mana Leak, necessary.
And as someone who's got about 28th edition copies in his bulk, I would be so on board with those becoming relevant again. Oh, bring up dust off those white borders. Let's go. Well, and they've said that they don't want to, that it was a mistake in the past, but they've also said that about Llanowar Elves, and they've confirmed Llanowar Elves will be in Foundations. And so,
it's power creep, man.
Honestly, they have been power creeping, right? So I love the idea of let's go into the past, find the things that were too good, and let's bring those in here alongside the new stuff that's too good that we're making, and we'll just, because everything's faster.
Death Right Shaman, let's go.
Why not? Let's go.
But jumping to the next color here. Yes. So if this was the hardest color for me to put together what I thought were the best evergreen cards was red. The red evergreen cards. Okay, so first things first, they're almost all removal spells. They're all damage spells.
Sure.
I think,
yeah,
because after I made the list, I'm like, well, God, this is so lame.
So definitely lightning bolt.
Spells.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No,
I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, I was gonna say, I think lightning bolt is
idea,
too good.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
yes,
shock should always be legal.
100%.
Shock should be evergreen. 1 mana, 2 damage, instant speed, 1 red. Should always be in standard. It's so integral to Red's identity. I feel like it's just, this is it. So it's really just a bunch of removal spells. At 1 mana, you need Shock. At 2 mana, you need Lightning Strike or a variant of Lightning Strike. It could be Searing Spear. It could be something that says they can't regenerate. No creatures regenerate anymore. But, a variant on Lightning Strike. So basically, 1 red, 1 colorless, instant, deal 3.
Yep.
1 red mana, deal 2, Shock. That's important. I think a braid is super important. I think a braid should always be legal. Maybe instead of, well, no, you need a lightning strike. You need a burn spell to go to the face, but a braid has just shown that it's so important to have a modular red spell, because so many of these red aggro decks cannot deal with the non-creature permanents that their opponents present. And they having a removal spell that also gives you that kind of utility, being able to hit a non-creature permanent, I feel like they need it. Shatter is just not good enough. They're never reprinting a card like Shatter. Shatter gets combined with the burn spell, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's Shatter, but it's honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I think a braid itself is just perfect design. I love it because it's a buff to Shatter that makes it relevant in more matchups. Excellent. Yeah, and it can't go face, which is the downside, which is why you still need Lightning Strike. I'm on board with everything you've mentioned so far. The one thing I wonder, is it time to modify a braid so that it can actually hit creatures or planeswalkers? Still can't go face, but you can add planeswalkers to the mix. I don't know. Is that?
I think that could be good. I think that's fine. I could see that. Push to braid. Maybe a braid is already so good. I don't know. Maybe that's. I don't know. I don't know that a braid needs it, but I'm just wondering. Is that something they could do, or is that something that they want to introduce on a more rotational basis, in draft environments down the road, maybe. But I don't know. Well, but a braid I'm 100% on board with. Yeah, because I think red always needs a Shatter, and a card that just Shatter individual card that just all it does is blow up an artifact is not good enough. So as long as they can meld it with another card, they've done this a bunch. When we get to green, there's a couple of cards that I feel like are similar, but a braid I think should always be so Shock, Lightning 100%. Strike, a braid. I think they should always have a Tormenting Voice type effect, and I think that's something we see printed every other set, all the time. There's a red, one colorless for either sorcery, or you can make it instant and maybe it does something else, or 3 mana and it makes a treasure. We've seen a bunch of variants on this. 2 mana sorcery, you discard a card and draw 2.
Thrill of Possibility has seen a lot of printings, and I feel like that's the most kind of down the middle emblematic version of it. So I can see Thrill of Possibility being in there. Absolutely. Yeah.
So again, Tormenting Voice style card. I think Thrill is better. Thrill of Possibility style card. Yeah, this is the same vein I'm talking about. We need something like this in standard all the time. It's a really key piece of a lot of different decks, especially combo decks, aggro decks, spell-based decks. Blue-red spells is the... I don't know how to describe. Every single set, Blue-Red's identity is playing a bunch of non-creature spells. Every single set. So having a bunch of... It's the same when we were talking about the blue cards and having things like Unsummon and these kind of things and Fading Hope. You need that for these archetypes, and there's always going to be these... We know that they're never going to go away. Every set, Blue-Red, this is what it does. And Thrill of Possibility, these kind of cards are really important in that kind of archetype. There are versions of this that are too good, like Faithless Looting. I don't think they should ever reprint that. But Agreed. Thrill is the good sweet spot, I think, there for this kind of effect, and it should always be around.
I agree. If they want to go harder with something like Faithless Looting, it would need to be on a situational basis. And Faithless Looting also just had the issue of drawing first, which is something that Red just it felt out of place for Red.
Yeah, it's not rummage, it's loot.
Yeah, it's a genuine loot, and it's so much better. Yeah. But I feel like Thrill of Possibility is perfect. And it's funny, in nowadays, I feel like we get 4 standard sets a year, and 2 of them will have a Thrill of Possibility in it, because as you're saying, it's this the draft archetype, and it's just solid. It does the thing. So just keep it coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
On board.
There's even some weird ones. I know we have a few in standard right now that exile 2 cards and then you can play them for free. Like that's starting to become a very common thing in red. I didn't have a card like that on my list because I just feel like Tormenting Voice, Thrill of Possibility style card is so close to that. But yeah, like Ren's Resolve. Instead of discarding a card, you're exiling the cards and you only have access to them for a limited time. We're seeing this more and more and more in red. This is something that never existed in red until relatively recently, at least at the level that I see it. It's on that druid, the adventure side of the
questing druid,
green druid, questing druid. It's you got Ren's Resolve. There was another one that just rotated. I know it sees playing Pioneer alongside.
I think it's Reckless Impulse. I want to say, is it?
Yeah, something like that.
Is that the one?
So they've done a bunch of these. Yes. So it's weird. It's becoming so common. I feel like maybe it's becoming part of Red's identity. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this. But
my understanding of that is that there was a time when I was really avidly into Maro's Drive to Work podcast, and then I stopped having a Drive to Work myself, so I'm behind. But he talked about that because Commander's popularity really exemplified the fact that certain colors just couldn't get card advantage meaningfully, and red and white were like the two chief among them. And when games are going long and in multiplayer, you really feel that. And so they were trying to figure out how do we get those colors to be able to draw cards in a way that feels appropriate. And red being the impulsive, passionate, live in the moment kind of color. The idea of like, well, you get to draw the cards, but you use them or lose them. Like you get them this turn or this turn and next turn, and then we're out. Like, so you don't get to plan around them. You just get them. And I think it fits. And, impulsive draw like this is something that, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like this.
It's been printed on a bunch of Chandras and stuff. It's a very red kind of mechanic now. So yeah, this wasn't even on my list, but I thought it's kind of in the same vein. But something like this probably always going to be included. And then the last one I had here, the last one I had, I really feel like, and again, maybe this is because I'm a boomer and, I remember red being defined by its X spells, Fireball, Disintegrate. Those cards I played a ton when I was a kid, and boy, when you draw that Fireball off the top, and Fireball is one of the most iconic fantasy spells that's ever existed. Every fantasy, universe, there's somebody's spewing fireballs, dragons, Now, again, I'm not saying they should literally print Fireball, but I'm saying they should print something like this in the core set and have it be evergreen. So it could be Light Up the Night type card. Light Up the Night's a little weird. Just anyway, one red X just blasts something. Maybe it's just Blaze. I don't know. Blaze is probably not good enough now. I don't know. But a variant of that. Maybe it's I think something like Devil's Play is probably too strong with the flashback, but something Blaze, this is old now, right? This is from a core set from a long time ago. I don't know if this is powerful enough for standard, but beef it up. Do something with like make Blaze, but I don't know what could they do? I don't even know. But
how would we feel about something like Crackle with power? Is that a little too complicated, maybe, or is that
might be too much?
I think it's
too powerful. I think that's too powerful. This is where there's fireballs that are too good. Like Devil's Play, I think is too good. Crackle's probably too good and with the ramp and everything we have in standard, like people like World Souls Rage we have in standard right now. That is too good for a core set card. I think it's very powerful. So you know what I mean. But something like this, but balance it and have it be just a possible top end for a lot of these decks, maybe a sideboard card, I don't know what, but having a big red X Fireball should always be part of standard. It's something every standard deck should always fear. If I'm playing against a red ramp deck or any kind of do they have a Fireball for my face? Like I love that tension in a lot of the games when these kind of cards are legal. It's like, can they just like untap and Fireball me here? Oh boy. I'd love to see it. Yeah.
And that would open up the idea for big red or red-based ramp is something that we're seeing a little bit. Right now, people are playing with it with some kind of fringe cards that, your Roxannes and whatnot, which are fine and those are fun. But I don't know, you really don't have an option to go big red right now. It's not because the cheap threats are just so good. There's nothing good enough pulling you to the top end. Even with Terror of the Peaks legal, which is kind of wild. But
yeah. The only deck I've seen that ramps into big red threats is the Calamity combo deck that has Calamity and Terror that you mentioned, stuff like that. But it's more there's green in there. It's not exactly quite the same thing, but. Yeah, big red. No Inferno Titans in standard, so there's not a lot of stuff to just ramp up to. The red planeswalkers are never really like taking over the late game kind of planeswalkers. They're all kind of slow, and they kind of go against the aggro plan a lot of time because they're 4 and 5 mana and whatever. But we'll see.
Well, so when it comes to red, when I think of core set red, like foundational definitive red, one of the cards that I think of is Shivan Dragon, right? Because of course we do. It's just it's the original dragon in the game. But I don't think it's a hot take to say the Shivan Dragon could absolutely in no way hang with the current level of power. Yeah. But I would love to see something like it. And the very first thing I think of is the Inferno of Star Mounts. Now, this is from the D&D set, and it's a legendary. But it is a 6/6 for 6, can't be countered, flying haste, and it has fire breathing, that ability to pump 1 and buff its power. And if you deal somebody 20 damage with it, which is very difficult to pull off, and talk about a win more ability. They just deals 20 damage to any target. So I don't know. I don't know. Is this a crazy idea that something like that could fit?
Yeah,
but
I like that. I think having an iconic big red dragon is perfect. I just don't know what it should look like. Maybe, something like Inferno, or something that ETBs and does damage. Like, there's Thunder Dragon or something they could print. I don't know. There's a bunch of dragons that they could put in here. Yeah, I agree. Something like that. And that's a nice homage to Shivan, what you said. One of my, when I was a kid, that was the card that we were just like, oh my God, like super just wowed by. It was that and Lord of the Pit were like the scariest things.
Well, I mean, one of the the horror stories you hear. I mean, how many times did a kid back in the day trade their Black Lotus for a Shivan Dragon and thought they, had made a fantastic deal, right? Yeah. Because it's a big dragon. Sure, take the flower, whatever. I got the,
take that crappy flower.
Yeah, it's a flower, whatever.
Zero.
But Shivan Dragon
sucks.
Right. Yeah. So actually, you know what? I'm realizing? I'm gonna just maybe this is a prediction, but I want to see an homage to Shivan Dragon that actually has Shivan in the name. So like I want to see like the Shivan Peak Lord or something, and make it like a 7/7 for 6, or like make it a 6/6 for 6, but give it haste and the fire breathing ability or something. Like just give it that little extra something so that we can play Shivan Dragon in standard again, and like call it Shivan.
They're dragons. It fits. Right? It's perfect because dragons. Like, I mean, House of the Dragon's incredible, and if we're going by that lore, then dragons never die, right? They just get older and bigger. The older the dragon, the bigger it gets. So this could be like Shivan Dragon, and it's almost like, oh, here's the OG Shivan Dragon. All these generations later, look at the evolution that's happened to this card, And you could even go like, this is the Shivan Dragon that we remember from back in the day, except now it's 1,000 years older, so it's got like. Yeah, it's a 7/7 with first strike and I don't know whatever else.
Whatever,
right? That'd be super cool. Totally.
I would love that. Yeah. And do the art so that it's very clear that you're modeling it after the original Shivan Dragon. Oh, how cool would that be? That'd be amazing.
I
would love that.
That'd be super cool.
Oh my! I want this so bad right now.
Anyway. That said, I didn't have Shivan Dragon on my list, but those are my 5. So I've got Shock, Lightning Strike, Abrade, Tormenting Voice, Light Up the Night. Light Up the Night being my, Fireball or whatever.
Right.
One of the cards I thought that they should also have is a 2-mana deal 4 in standard, so like Obliterating Bolt type of card. I think cards like Shouldered and even Preacher of the Schism, like those cards have demonstrated that red has to have ways to kill higher toughness things. And when they can't, they just can't win the game. You've got to give them something like, we've seen Rebel Salvo and like a bunch of these like 3 mana, they deal 5 kind of things. But something along that, like either 2 mana deal 4, 3 mana deal 5, like a big red, fire blast kind of spell to blow away a 5 toughness creature or 4 toughness creature. I think they need that. And whenever they don't have that, they really struggle against green decks and even black and other colors that are, playing high toughness creatures. It seems like 3 mana, you get 4 toughness on your, good 3-drop now. It's just like Lightning Strike is not cutting it anymore. Lightning Helix is in standard and it doesn't see a ton of play. Like it's just not killing what you need it to kill, right? So
I completely agree. And I think Obliterating Bolt is a really good shout because this is a newer card, But I feel like they got the design right on this one. Like the numbers feel right. The fact that it exiles, like that's something that we've seen red cards do in the past. Scourge was the first set that came out when I was playing, so Carbonize is one I'll always remember.
Oh yeah. Right.
It wasn't good. It was very expensive for what you got, but it was one of those where it would exile the creature, and it makes a big difference. Denying death
evil.
triggers and whatnot. Yeah, sometimes you just need that, and so I feel like Obliterating Bolt is actually really excellent. So I would not mind this one being locked in for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. So hopefully
definitely.
Red gets a bunch of good burn spells. That's all they need really to function. But last but not least, green.
Yes.
Now, green is not a color I play often. I think green is probably the color I play the least in constructed competitive Magic, but it's been one of the best colors in Standard. In years past, in Throne of Eldraine, for that whole stretch, green was just insane. Lately we haven't seen green do a ton of huge things. I mean, green black, and there's some other decks, but like mono green, big dorks hasn't been around for a long time, like big, ramp into big stuff. Now we're starting to see a couple decks, the Calamity decks and other stuff, but a lot of the ramp decks have just been domain. They're just like 5-color domain, because it's just like, if you're gonna ramp into something, ramp it to Atraxa, and if we're playing all these colors, Leyline, Binding, Herd Migration get paid off for all these colors. But I'd like to see a few cards in green always be evergreen. I think one of the ones that a lot of people associate with green is Naturalize. And Naturalize / Plummet. Now, like these, it's just like Shatter with a Braid. These cards are too bad on their own, so let's combine them. Like having a Naturalize, like Pick Your Poison, where it can hit a flyer, hit an artifact or creature, or hit, like Pick Your Poison, I think is too good to be evergreen because it's 1 mana. I think these effects should be 2. They should be instant speed, but they should be a bit better than Naturalize. I think it should be Naturalize plus Plummet, like on 1 card, and that should be evergreen. Always. Like always a green answer to non-creature permanents and a flying creature.
Yeah, I completely agree. How would we feel about something like Return to Nature? It's Naturalize, except it's modal, so it's destroy an artifact or destroy an enchantment, but it also has the exile target card from a graveyard, so it has that extra, just a little extra something like to that. It. Yeah.
Beef it up a little bit. I think this should always be around, right?
100%. Could not agree harder on that one. Yeah.
So the next one, I think they should always have 4 mana put 2 lands into play card. We've seen this printed so many times. It's clear that green it's always great to go from, Llanowar Elves on turn 1 to like a ramp spell on turn 3 or 4 to like, you play this on turn 3, Explosive Vegetation, there's Cartographer's Map, there's Invasion of Zendikar, there's so many. They all do almost the same thing. And like the battle is really good. The Invasion of Zendikar, you can flip it. Like it doesn't have to be that good. That's for a regular set. But like the foundation set should just have the basic, Explosive Vegetation. Or maybe if this isn't good enough, give us a token along, give us a map with it or whatever. Give us
something like that.
Whatever.
And Explosive Vegetation is just the original, and which is why I pulled it up for the video feed. In reality, you're right. There's so many different variants of this that they could go with, and they've boosted them all. This 4 mana get 2 lands plus something is just bound to be a thing. I doubt we're going to see a battle. I doubt we're going to see the Cartographer Survey that allows you to get non-basics, but they're limited to what's on top of your deck, that kind of thing. I guarantee I'll be shocked if we don't have something like that.
I think it's important. I think there's a few different ramp. You could print Cultivate. You could print a 3 mana ramper. You could print Rampant Growth. When I was talking about this on my stream this week, and people were like, "What about Rampant Growth? We should always have ramp." And I'm like, No, not Rampant Growth. I think Rampant Growth is a little too strong at 2 mana. Llanowar Elves, I already feel like is pretty strong, almost too strong at 1 mana.
Yep.
But so I don't know. Maybe if they're gonna put elves, I think putting Rampant Growth and Llanowar Elves, like I think this card is too good. Whenever this is legal, that's all the green decks are doing. They're just like, ramping with this, fixing. I think 3 mana is a bit better. Like if it's Cultivate, you think Cultivate would be fine? I don't know. What do you think about this?
Yeah, Cultivate is still pretty fantastic. So Rampant Growth, just for 2 mana, search the library for a land, put it on the battlefield tapped. I mean, Rampant Growth is so good and so emblematic of the strategy. The strategy is called Ramp. This is how it got the name. So I'm inclined to agree. Like I would like to see Rampant Growth in Standard, but I'm also a little bit of something of a filthy green player myself, I do agree that it's very, very powerful. Like, ramp is one of those effects that it scales very I don't know, disproportionately or whatever, based on how fast you can do it. You know, 1 mana ramp is more than twice as good as 2 mana ramp, and 2 mana ramp is significantly better than 3 mana ramp, like by a lot. Because Rampant Growth and Llanowar Elves both allow you to ramp into 4-drops, which is, you know, being able to hit those early. And when you have other ramp spells at the 4-drop slot, it gets nuts. So, honestly, they just kind of compound. And so the fact that we're getting Llanowar Elves, I think, is good. It's also easier to answer than something like Rampant Growth. Because with Rampant Growth, if you can't counter it, the lands are there and they're off to the races. With Llanowar Elves, you can bolt them, you can push them, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can deal with that. Cultivate, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some kind of Cultivate variant. I'm a little old school. I would prefer it be Kodama's Reach, but that's Arcane, and I know they'll never do that. They gave us Arcane, so they gave us Cultivate, so they never had to print the Arcane version again. So I know that is where we stand, and that's okay. I would like to see Cultivate in there. I think that'd be pretty good. I think it is a very powerful card. And giving us Llanowar Elves, you have the opportunity for the dream scenario of the turn 1 Llanowar Elf into the turn 2 Cultivate, which is just cash money. If you can pull that off, you're living the dream. And I think having a ramp dream like that be viable, I think is important. And right now we have enough removal running around so that people know to bolt the bird at this point. You know, chances are you're not going to get away with it more often than not. And so... you know, I don't think it's going to be problematic per se if you go that route. But
I think there's only so many ramp cards they can print. So what do you think? I agree that green ramp should always be a thing, but what do you think is enough for it to be like? What is it like? What do we have to print that's enough for green to be good without going overboard? We're not going to print Llanowar Elves, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, and Explosive Vegetation. No green deck's going to play all that.
No,
so Llanowar Elves, like you said, cheaper the better. Llanowar Elves is the key, the best, the key piece.
100%.
Do you need Rampant Growth or even Cultivate? What if they just gave us Llanowar Elves and Explosive Vegetation? Would that be enough to make green always be an option in Standard, like green ramp decks be viable? Or does it need something in between?
You know, I kind of like the idea of the... I kind of like where you're what you're alluding to there, because then they have flexibility within that middle ground to turn, depending on what sets are available, what's rotating, to either crank up the dial and make ramp significantly better or pull it back and make ramp notably worse for various rotation seasons. So, and that would give them a lot of flexibility in the middle there, because there's nothing stopping them from printing Cultivate into, you know, just one of the normal standard sets that's around for 2 years or whatever. And, you know, if they want to. So, yeah, I kind of like the idea of, as far as Foundations is concerned, give us the really powerful 1 mana elf and give us a good 4-drop and kind of call it there. I don't hate that. That's actually a cool idea.
Well, we already have like a weird, you know, it's worse than Rampant Growth, but there is a 2 mana, you know, go pull a forest from your deck, put it into play spell in Standard right now. So, I mean, there is even still that kind of thing. Like you said, we use the regular sets to kind of fill, Glimpse the Core.
Glimpse the Core,
you know, which is much worse than Rampant Growth, but it's still, you know, if you're doing the green ramp thing, like this is obviously a 2 mana ramper, you could play this alongside Elf, alongside whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. I think I would like to see an elf. Well, we know the elf is there, but I would like to see a 4 mana ramper. But I'm not sure on the 2 and 3. I don't think we need 2 and 3s in Foundation, like Cultivate or Rampant Growth or Farseek or any of the you know, the options.
Farseek. Farseek would be amazing. With the Surveillance, though, there's no way they'd give that to us.
Yeah, that would be way too good. Again, this and Rampant Growth are almost too good. I think giving a basic force like Into the North or whatever style of Rampant Growth is great. That's fine. That's fine. You want to be mono green? Good luck.
Yeah,
anyway,
go nuts. Yeah.
But so we've got Naturalize / Plummet variant. I think they should always have. They should always have an Explosive Vegetation variant, I think. I think they should also have a Prey Upon variant, always be evergreen. Prey Upon being the 1 green mana fight spell. It was the first kind of green fight spell like this. This was before fight was a keyword. Or was it? Oh, it did say fight. It might have been the first time.
I think this is a reprint that I just pulled up for the video.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think
it was from Innistrad. I remember playing with it. It was kind of I think that was before they
you know what? Even in the original Innistrad, it does say fight. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was the
That
first time.
might have been the introduction to it. Yeah.
They have the reminder text there because it was So something like this: 1 mana,
Yeah.
my creature fights your creature. Now, Prey Upon's old, and this card probably isn't good enough, but a version of this is something that green should always have. So whether it's 1 mana, creature gets +1/+1/+1/0 and fights, or maybe it's a instant speed for that might be too good for one, but a variant of this, should always be legal.
Agreed.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now we have like Hard Hitting Question, which is the 1 mana bite, and that's performing very well. And I've seen that in a number of kind of green based,
maybe it's a
aggro
bite
or mid range list, and maybe something like that. I mean, Hard Hitting Question is very detective theme, so it's very much murders. But so that
something
I don't
like
know if but something like that, and know it could be. I mean, Prey Upon being a little less powerful than some of the other ones we're going to see. I mean, that's core set. That's got core set written all over it, right? So like maybe for foundations, Prey Upon might be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I dig it.
Green's a very heavy color commitment kind of color. A lot of green decks are really heavy green or mono green, and they need a way to deal with creatures. Green, this is their only way to really, deal with the board. So having a really cheap, efficient way to kill other creatures is just always should always be around. And I think they need to put something like that, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it. The other one I had here, so we've got Naturalized Explosive Vegetation, Prey Upon, Giant Growth. You can't have 100%. Green without Giant Growth. It's got to be in there, right? I mean, I don't know what they could do to Giant Growth. Is it still? It's probably still good enough as is for standard. Just 1 mana 3/3 is very good.
I feel like they just got this one right when they first designed it. Like this is absolutely. Yeah, it should just be in a common. This. Make it always available. Like 100%. I'm absolutely. I don't even have anything to add.
I just wonder if is it good enough? Because it is in standard now, and it's not seeing a ton of play. It's been for a while, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't see a ton of play because it hasn't had a lot of good homes. If some kind of like mono green deck becomes viable, then maybe. But even then, like, just because it's not competitively viable doesn't mean that it doesn't belong in the format. I think for newer players, Giant Growth is such a clean way to show them how combat tricks work that I love that. And I think it's not a mistake that I wouldn't be surprised if every single starter product that has ever been printed that has green in it has included Giant Growth at this point. Maybe not every single one, but the majority of them, because it's just it's just damn good at what it does, and I feel like that absolutely belongs in the set. Yeah.
And in the same vein, I think there always has to be, as much as it pains me to say this, there always has to be a Snakeskin Veil in the format, or a Ranger's Guile, or a Royal Treatment, or take your pick. I loathe these cards, but green really needs stuff like this, or it just gets wrecked by Doomblades. So you just have to have a card like this, and I will continue to lose to these cards.
Yeah. So bring Veil of Summer into Foundation. I'm kidding.
Veil of Summer. Yeah. Dear God.
Yeah. But, that's the most extreme variant of this. But I feel like Snakeskin Veil is probably the cleanest. It's
been reprinted so many times in so many different forms. Like it's very clear that it just has to always be evergreen. Otherwise, green.
Yep.
It's green. The removal, as the removal gets better, green just needs this kind of thing to keep pace. That's all. But,
Yep.
And then my honorable mentions, I had Scavenging Ooze. I think a Scavenging Ooze type card. Now, these days we see Scavenging Ooze be combined with other cards. For example, there's a Dinosaur Ramp card that is a 2 mana 2/2 that taps to make a mana. Does it tap to make Dino? It's a Paleontologist, I think. Maybe it can tap for any color, but then you can pay 2 colorless to just exile things from the yard. Or in the Bloomburrow, in the latest set, we saw the 2 mana 3/3 that can eat things from the yard. Scavenging Ooze style card like that. It's got to cost 2. It's got to have an activated ability that eats the yard. I think that is so important for green. And I've just listed a few cards that are legal just in standard. We see this kind of cards be printed a lot, and I think there's a reason why. It's great to have a creature that can also attack graveyards, and that's a very green thing. We've seen a bunch of creatures in green that do this, and I think it's good. I think it's a good pressure valve as well to, again, keep graveyard decks in check and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
I like that. And they're clearly designing in this vein right now, and we're seeing a lot of different variants of it. Foundations would be a perfect place to just lock in OG Scavenging Ooze. It's always here if you need it.
Something like that.
I'm here for
that
it.
Was an honorary mention. And then my last honorary mention, every green player knows this card must be included in every set, the core set. Every standard should have it. Colossal Dreadmaw.
Yes. I mean, of course. That's just
for the lulls. It's ever since it's been printed, it's become kind of a meme that, in limited, we always say, oh, what's the Colossal Dreadmaw of the format?
Yep.
Like, there's always this giant, the latest one in Bloomburrow's an elk, whatever. It's a Dreadmaw in elk form. It's Dreadmaw. Yep. They always need something like this. Maybe it's legit just Colossal Dreadmaw. Maybe it's the elk. Like, I mean, God, Colossal Dreadmaw now, it comes in, what does he have? Flash, Vigilance,
It's Flash,
Trample?
Vigilance, Reach, Trample.
Reach?
Yes.
Okay.
It's got reach.
So,
it's a moose, and it has reach. How does that?
Yeah.
I know they're big, but come on. Anyway,
they're large. But something like that,
Anyway.
That's an uncommon. This is a common, so that's a little bit pushed. But something like that, 6 mana, 6/6, large dork. Here's your baseline large dork, and then go from there. Okay, this one's rare. Oh, so it's even got this and this. But this is your basic large green creature that hits hard and is just just enough power and toughness for the casting cost and everything that it's like that's your baseline, right? I think they, this is an honorable mention. I'm being kind of silly, but I think they should have this in the foundation set, something like this.
I dig it. I absolutely dig it.
But
now,
that's
all
one
that comes to mind that I think would be fun to have in Foundations. I don't know. It's probably more of an honorable mention as well. I don't know that we need it, and especially because I don't see them doing a lot with Mill these days. But Gaia's Blessing.
Oh yeah.
How would we feel about having that as
card.
Potential sideboard tech at all times? Like we were talking about Graveyard Hate being something that we should always just have access to, just because as metas shift, maybe it's valuable.
Yeah.
And Gaia's Blessing is just one of the best anti-mill techs that's been around.
I like it. Yeah, I think you're right. And this like Gaia's Blessing I really like, and I think something like this should also be in the set. But this takes us into a category of cards that I didn't put any of the cards on my list from this category today that we've talked about, but this category is something I was thinking of where, the Foundation set, they should print a bunch of, not color hosers, but specific, very linear kind of scalpels to deal with different issues in Standard. I know over the years in core sets, they've printed things like Fry or a Noxious something where
Noxious Grasp was the anti-Oko tech.
Exile, green or white permanent, or Fry was red instant that zaps white or blue thing for 5, and it's uncounterable, so it was great for blasting to Fairy, Hero of Dominaria or whatever, right? So this is something they always put in these core sets because again, this is for the whole rotation or more than one rotation of Standard, 5 years. How deep do you go here? So I didn't put any of these kind of color hoser cards on the list, but they're definitely a category of card that I think they need to have a bunch of them. Specific hate cards. So there needs to be an artifact graveyard hate card, like we mentioned earlier, something like Soul Guide, or maybe Hearse is probably too good, but like Soul Guide or Tormod's Crypt, maybe something like that. I think green also needs a way to eat graveyards. I mentioned Scavenging Ooze. We've seen Tranquil Frill back, and green gets a bunch of ways to do that. But like a red spell that can't be countered that hits a white or blue permanent, to give red some game against control and planeswalkers or whatever. Those kind of cards, there's a whole range of them. I didn't even think about which ones could be printed here because I don't know which ones. This gets much harder because what do you put in the 5-year set when you don't know which archetypes need to be hosed? Which archetypes need to be reined in? We don't know yet. So I think just putting a smattering, like try and get an even spread of I don't know, the most commonly played, cards like this from the past. Like I know Fry has seen a ton of play. There was a 1 red mana Reckless Assault or something. It was like 1 red mana, deal 4 to a flyer. Oh God, I can't remember. There's a bunch of these kind of things where they're very narrow, they're very specific, but they're very much for sideboard, sideboards in Constructed, in Standard. Noxious Grasp was another one. I like. There's been so many over the years. I don't remember the names of all of them, but
yeah. Were you thinking of Rending Volley or
Rending Volley? That's
Rending Volley.
Yes,
Instant for
Rending
4
Volley.
damage to target white or blue creature. Yeah, very specific, but very cheap for what you get. Yeah,
that kind of thing. That's what they need to put in. Not like a ton, but every color should have something like this to give people the options, in standard to be able to combat whatever broken deck happens to rise to the top of standard. So we'll see. I didn't even go into that category of cards, but I assume we're going to see a bunch of those, right? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but
it'll be very interesting to see which ones or which ones they include, because the folks who are building the set obviously have some visibility into what the plans are down the road, and so
I'd like to think so.
They know better than we will, obviously, as to what might be problematic. So maybe put a couple of safety valves in place right now that might be able to rein in some of the future nonsense that they have planned.
I hope so. I hope they know what they're doing. I hope they're listening to the people who are telling them do this, do that. But yeah. Legacy, their announcement with Legacy recently, where the guy was like, you should probably ban Grief from Legacy. They're like,
and we didn't.
We'll take a note of that. They didn't. It's like, listen to these people. That's why you're paying them.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
hopefully that was an isolated incident. Yeah.
And hopefully these cards, they put some stuff in here. They listen to the people who are testing this, or I don't know, curating. For Foundations has to be a hell of a set to put together. To try and gauge what is going to be relevant, what is going to be necessary for the next 5 years. Like, they know the sets that are coming out for the next 3 maybe years, but I think that the best thing to do with Foundations is cast a really wide net. Just put in a good range of everything, right? And that's what a lot of these cards on my list are kind of doing. Try to prop up as many archetypes as you can. At the same time, try to give every color enough tools to deal with very specific linear strategies, because those tend to be very, very powerful. The best decks in Magic are very laser focused combo or aggro or control decks. That's always almost always the case, unless we have some outlier with some just really, like, Fable of the Mirror Breaker is the best card, so now mid-range is just the best. Like, aside from these outlier formats like Standard used to be, where we had cards that were way too good for the format. Usually we just need a good smattering of hate pieces for different linear strategies, and that should be good. So I'm looking forward to Foundation. I think it's going to be great. I hope it's a good draft format. I kind of miss drafting core set. I have a soft spot for core set draft. It was like downhill skiing, and I'm on the double black diamond run, and then you know what? I'm just like, I'm a little tired today or whatever. I don't want to go down the double black diamond moguls. I kind of just like taking a little blue square. Just a nice, easy drift down the mountain. That's what core set draft is like. It's like I get to kind of just enjoy these.
Yeah. I want to hear folks uttering the sentence, "Hey chat, do we take the air elemental on this one?" I think that's where we want to be. Like,
I love air
now
elemental.
We're talking.
Exactly. Love the opportunity. A bunch of divinations. I remember drafting M20 draft was mono blue was great. But anyway, so we'll see. I hope it's good. But that's all I had for the Foundation set. Did you want to add anything before we wrap it up?
You definitely touched on what I was thinking. I'm on board with all of this. Oddly enough, I'm kind of surprised that, now that I'm thinking back, I'm surprised I didn't bring up Life Gain when we were talking about white, I'm thinking some kind of Soul Warden and or a Johnny's Pridemate effect. They seem to love that.
Pridemate.
So I would be shocked if OG Pridemate is not in this.
I thought of it, and then I'm like, is that a core part of White's identity? I think it is. At this point.
At this point, I think
definitely,
it is.
Right?
They've gone back to this well enough times that it's really clear that they like this for...
There's so many versions of this. The new one in Standard, the stupid, it gets flying and whatever, like that. Oh, that one's ridiculous.
Yeah, Essence Channeler, the bat is... Essence Channeler is pretty fantastic. And it's funny because I remember thinking, like, finally, Voice of the Blessed is leaving, so I don't have to deal with, 1 in every 100 games going up against that deck at a time when I can't draw my removal. Like, just because that's always... It's frustrating when those decks pop off and you don't find your removal pieces in time. It's tough to deal with. Specifically with Voice of the Blessed. And so finally that one rotated and it's like, okay, sweet. And then Essence Chandler showed up. It's like, wait, dang it. So here we are. But I feel like Pridemate is one of those, they clearly want this effect in Standard moving forward. So just give us the OG that doesn't have any of the bells and whistles. And just like having Scavenging was available, still print souped up versions of it, but just keep the baseline available for folks who want it.
Yeah, agreed. Same with Soul Warden again. If you're going to put the Pride Maiden, then you have to put the Soul Warden type.
Or some variant of it.
Too.
Yeah.
Some variant, yeah.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? The other card you talked about, Johnny's Pride made me think of, and I lost it. Never mind. I was going to say one of the... I was going to talk about the black cards. Yeah. So, a lot of people, when I mentioned, I think Disfigure and Doomblade variants should be legal and standard, a lot of people were like, what about Fatal Push? What about Cut Down? Like, why Disfigure? Shouldn't we have like a 1-mana way to just kill, like really efficiently kill almost anything in the early game? And I don't think so. I think Fatal Push is obviously amazing, one of the best black removal spells ever printed, just because it's 1 mana. And it was very good, but I mean, it defines the format. And I think that's the problem. When you push the removal this hard, then it actually does the opposite of what you want, which is, you want to have as many archetypes available as possible, while at the same time giving people a way to deal with those archetypes. This is too efficient of a way to deal with a lot of aggressive and mid-range archetypes, and therefore it keeps those down. It suppresses them. Just like Cut Down. Cut Down is very good. It's almost so good that it warps the format without people maybe even realizing it, but you just can't play, and I've said this on the podcast before, you can't play a 3-mana creature that dies to Cut Down, or 3 or more mana. You just can't. Usually 4 and 5 mana, the stats are there that it's not dying to Cut Down, but there's a lot of 3-mana. Adeline was a good example that was so good, but it just disappeared for a while in Standard because everybody was packing Cut Down to kill Rafine, and because everybody's got all these Cut Downs, other cards that die to Cut Down for 3 mana just aren't viable. You were much better off playing Gix as soon as that got printed. Creature of the Schism, I think a big reason they made it a 2/4 was so that it didn't die to Cut Down. So this is where it gets interesting with design. I mean, they could give us Cut Down and then design creatures to just not die to Cut Down, like make a lot of them be 2/4s and stuff, but I think that's a dangerous road to go down. I don't know. Maybe power creep is to the point where we need a Cut Down. I think Disfigure and Doomblade is enough, but a lot of people in my chat were going like, no, they should put Fatal Push or Cut Down, one of these really efficient 1-mana black removal spells in Standard. I don't think so. I'm very close on the fence, but I fall on the side of I think it's too oppressive. What do you think about the 1 mana?
I can see both sides of it because the threats are all banana pancakes insane right now, and they all have to be answered as quickly as possible. And so I can appreciate the need for these, but I'm inclined to agree too. You end up in this weird arms race that it gets the power creep going. So I don't mind the idea of a Cut Down or even someday a Fatal Push existing in Standard again. I don't want it in Foundations. That's kind of where I'm feeling.
Okay,
like I feel
agree.
Because right now you're absolutely right. Cut Down is defining what's playable. And I forgot about Adeline, but you're right. That card is insane, and it just stopped seeing play because if the other creatures weren't there, you couldn't get the attack trigger right away. Yeah, she died to Cut Down, and you played her out, and that's it.
During spoiler season, when we're looking at the creatures in the set and going, oh, will this see play? Oh, will that see play? The first thing that I think of is, does it die to Cut Down? Does it die to Cut? If it costs 1 mana, you're good. If it costs 2 mana, it's not amazing, but you can still get away with it if it has a good ETB or whatever. But if it costs 3 mana and it doesn't ETB and do something immediately and dies to Cut Down, you just can't play that card. It fails the Cut Down test. I don't want to have a Cut Down test or the equivalent for every creature that gets printed, so I agree with you. It shouldn't be in Foundations. They should put this kind of thing in the regular sets, though, every once in a while, right?
Every once in a while. Yeah.
Put a Cut Down type card, but it will become the kind of card that shapes the format, even though it's so innocuous. Like Fatal Push, out of all the insanely powerful energy cards and everything else that were in Kaladesh, it was very quietly this 1 mana black uncommon that defined not only that format, but even Pioneer and Modern to an extent. Like it sees play in these other formats. It's so good that people miss it because it's so innocuous. It's like, how can this? We're talking formats with Emrakul here. No, this is quietly one of the most important cards from that set. Not close, So you've got to really be careful with it. Is all I'm saying. And I agree it shouldn't 100%. Be in there, but some people were pining for it.
I feel like Disfigure is the perfect example of it is 1 mana removal. It can get the job done in a pinch if you have to, but it's more narrow. And so, I think that's a good fit as far as core sets go.
What if Disfigure gave -3/-3? What was that called? There was a removal spell. You pay 3 life. You paid 3 life, I think. Yeah, there was no out for sacking a creature. There was a removal spell in standard. Oh, it was from AFR, I think, or something. It was 1 black mana, -3/-3 instant, but you paid 3 life. I want to say I'm so bad with Magic names because I just all these years of playing all these Magic cards, I never remember, especially from the last like 4 years. Unless I played with it in standard, and this card never saw play. Oh god, it was like 1 mana.
There was Ray of Enfeeblement. Is that the one?
No.
Okay, yeah, target creature's -4/-1 or -4/-4 if it's white. Again,
no, that was it's different. Damn it!
Yeah,
I forget what it's called.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, what do you think? Would that be too good? 1 mana.
Well, -3/-3 is a little interesting,
bolt, right?
Kinda, yeah, because then you'd end up with you'd end up in a scenario where that could destroy a 3/3 all of a sudden. So that all of a sudden Gix can die. I feel like that's too. Yeah, I feel like that's better than cut down, right? In most situations. So
it's probably
yeah, which is unfortunate.
Kill Gix,
right? Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. Because I feel like that it needs black needs something, but the moment black has a 1 mana removal spell, small creatures like. I want to be able to look at a 3-drop that is a 2/3 that has some kind of cool upside ability and be able to give it the time of day. That's where I want to be. And right.
So.
And even then, if that upside isn't an ETB, it's probably still not going to be worth it. But I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see. I
don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But
I think we need good answers to these ever increasing, increasingly powerful threats, but you gotta be careful with the answers too. If you push them too hard, it really does suppress the number of decks that can be built because it suppresses the number of creatures that are viable. You just in competitive Magic, you can't be trading down like that on mana, like 3 mana for 1 mana. You're just gonna lose those games if that happens a bunch. So, and anyway, interesting. We'll see what they put in it, but. That was our spiel on foundations. Oh yeah,
yeah. And again, I appreciate everybody's kind of feelings on that, especially if you play older formats. Then I can understand why you have a affection for those cards. I totally get it, but
it's different in modern. You got Ragavan, okay? You can have Fatal Push. You need it,
100%.
Standard. I don't know.
But in the prowess builds right now, when a Slickshot Show Off has 12 power, yes, I would really like to be able to 1 mana point and click remove it. I get that. I do, but
hey, Disfigure does it.
Actually, that would do it in a lot of cases.
We'll see.
Anyway.
But if there's nothing else, we do have a question of the week, I think.
We do. So we do have a question of the week. Before we get to it, I'm curious, do you have anything coming up that you want to let the people know about?
Yes, big celebration coming in September. It's called My Wife's Going on a Business Trip, and I get to stream a lot. I'm going to do a 24-hour stream. I'm going to do
parents. Let's do this.
Yeah, we're going to have a sleepover. I'm going to do a 24-hour stream. I'm going to do I don't know. I might even do a subathon. We'll see. I'll do something big.
Nice.
And then October is a month every year that I look forward to with great pleasure. October is, of course, horror month. And we play a lot of horror games on my channel. I know a lot of horror games are not for everybody. I am a sick man. I love stress. I stress myself out. I love to be on the edge of my chair. Alien Isolation, all the classics. We're going to be playing a bunch of horror games. I just got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I got a key to. I was playing that on the weekend. Just a bunch of stuff. Friday the 13th. You join me. It's going to be great. We're going to be doing it. I'm still going to be playing Magic, but I'm going to start maybe like 2 days a week. I'm just going to be playing horror games. It's going to be great. So that's October. Big subathons and stuff on the weekend of September 15th. But that's it for me. What about you?
Sick. I'm going to be doing a lot of Magic. I'm going to be playing so much Magic. It's going to be insane. That's per usual. I've also been looking into a lot of other.
Yeah.
I've been looking into a lot of other card games as well. And actually, this upcoming Wednesday, the week of, just days after this releases, I'm actually going to be playing a game of Havoc with one of the designers of it on my stream.
Oh, you were talking about that. Yeah. Cool.
So that's a pretty cool game that I've been having a lot of fun with. And so there's that, and there's some other card games. Right now, it feels like there's a lot of card games that are hitting the market.
Oh yeah.
And I've been kind of dipping my toes in, checking them out, and actually been in some conversations with a couple of companies who are designing them. So hopefully I'll have more stuff on those coming in the near future.
You get any extra keys, let me know. I'll come in there and help you test. It's the same with Artovia, the game I was talking about last week. I can give people keys if they want. So
love it.
You're right. Like a lot of these card games coming out, it's good. The more the better, the more the merrier.
Absolutely.
We win when there's a lot of variety, right? Consumers win. So
100%. Well, and people have had 30 years to play cards, play games like Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, try to figure out what works, what doesn't, and try to perfect it. And there's some cool designs out there that people are latching onto to make the experience different while familiar. So it's pretty neat. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cool. Love to hear it.
More to come on that, everybody. Yeah. But yeah, so question of the week. So this is something that we do every single week. Also, I'm realizing that we went this entire podcast without pointing out the fact that there are only two of us here today. Carlos, C. Favreto Jr. has been very busy as of late, so he was not able to join us this week. But we do want to give a huge shout out to him, actually, because he made partner on Twitch this past week.
Yeah, congratulations,
so mad
Carlo.
props. Well deserved. Oh my goodness. About time that he's getting the respect that he deserves on that platform. He's been absolutely killing the game for a while now. So congratulations. And if you see C. Favreto _Jr. live on Twitch, pop in, congratulate him on that sexy purple check mark. Looks good on him. Anyway, so yeah, Carlo, we appreciate you, man. Good work. But yeah, so the question of the week time is something that we do every week to try to just kind of get some informal conversation going that isn't necessarily related to Magic. It sometimes is. And I have a question that is related to Magic. I don't think I've done this one before. I should probably write down which ones I've asked. But if you could move to any of the planes in the multiverse, assuming that getting there isn't going to be a significant hassle, but if you could live on any one of the planes in the multiverse, where would you want to? Where would you want to live? You're into horror. Do you want to live on Innistrad?
No, God, no. I like playing, engaging with horror when I have unlimited lives, not when I have one life.
Fair. Yeah.
That is tough. I mean, okay, so if I was to seriously think about this, and I'm not a planeswalker, I'm not a hero, I would be a 0/1 creature. So
exactly, like you. Just
where
you
would I like to live
you
as
can have your stuff
a 0/1?
And your loved ones can come with you, but you're there. It's like, where would you like to?
Ideally, I'd like to be in a safe place, a plane that is relatively peaceful, which is almost none of them, but something stable, that's not facing imminent, apocalypse or whatever from some invasion.
I mean, let's assume that we're after before any of these events. Yeah.
Or post Phyrexian invading all the planes.
Yeah, that's in the rear view. We don't have to worry about that.
Man, I don't know. That is a great question. I think I would like to live on a plane with a lot of water. I love the ocean. I love swimming and that kind of stuff. I think it would be cool to live on a plane like that. I'm not a merfolk though, so I don't know how well I'd be adapted to living on a place like that. That's it. Let me think about it. Do you have one in mind? Okay. I'm gonna keep thinking. I'm gonna come up with something. But you tell me yours.
The first one that came to my mind. I am an absolute just tech addict. I am staring at screens all day, every day, and as a result, modern day Kamigawa is like, that was the first one that I thought was like, that one I feel like my current lifestyle could kind of port to that decently. So that was the first one that came to mind, but at the same time, I don't know, would I like to live on Otawara? Because like I can't fly, so that's probably not a great idea. I don't know the area well enough, but that seems like the first one that came to my mind. I definitely don't love big cities, so I would not want to be on Ravnica personally. It's just not my speed. I'm sure Dominaria, being just the most diverse plane, has a place
is that
would
boring?
just. I mean, you can't. I don't think so.
You can't go wrong with Dominaria.
Can't go wrong.
Like
really,
it's got everything. Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, it's got all the landmarks from the early days of the game that we would be fun.
I'm not into body modifications, so I think I'd stay away from like Phyrexia or Mirrodin. It seems like everybody on Mirrodin's like part machine now. That would be kind of cool. Like Mirrodin's a really cool. Like I'm also like techie and I like that kind of stuff. It would be cool. But I think you basically have to become a cyborg if you live in a plane like that. I don't know. It'd be inevitable.
Well, if you're born on Mirrodin, your body incorporates metallic bits. I think if you move there, you're probably okay. But the people who are native to Mirrodin all have metal in their bodies, but I don't think that's I don't think that's a requirement for me. I don't think it's like Bloomborough where you just change when you get there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know that. Maybe Bloomborough would be an interesting one, but then would I become an animal? I guess I would become
presumably
some kind of animal. Not crazy about that. Not into the furries. I don't know. I maybe. I think I want to say Dominaria. I feel like Dominaria. I can think of a bunch of places. I would love to go to Teleria. I would love to go to like there's some places that I don't know. I'd like to see. I think would be cool. I'd go to the academy and stuff, but I can't remember in the lore. Is it still even there? Did it get destroyed? I don't remember.
I don't think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
What about Sarah? Sarah's plane got destroyed, right? Her own personal plane of angels. That's got to be the best plane, right? They're all you got all these super attractive people. Everything's wonderful. Everybody's an angel. That's got to be the best. But didn't it get destroyed? I thought it got destroyed or something.
Sarah's I believe that's the meditation realm is what it's called now. Well, and that's where, if I'm not mistaken, that's where Nicol Bolas is being held. So like I believe that's like the prison realm. I'm pretty sure was actually the meditation realm, which I thought, I could be wrong on this. Vorthos, please correct me in the comments. But I believe that's Sarah's. So Ugin and Nicol Bolas are chilling there. One of them against their will. So maybe that's not a fun place to be right now. Post War of the Spark. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, Sarah's realm is like that's the closest we can find to like a typical view of heaven, right? Like
heaven.
I feel like that's kind of the right answer. Yeah.
Or Dominaria. I think Dominaria would be cool. I think Dominaria is probably stable. It's got to be one of the most protected realms because Teferi's there literally protecting it, and you know, whoever else, all the other planeswalkers have been there many times, would jump to its defense. It's got to be one of the best ones, right? Chandelar, maybe.
Chandelar could be
everything's
fun.
So much magic. You were telling us last week. I was like, wow, I didn't know that's how it worked. That would be kind of cool. I've always wanted to be,
who knows what's going on there? That could be fun to explore. Absolutely. Yeah.
So interesting. So what are our final answers then? So what did you say as a final answer for your
I was thinking Kamigawa. I think I would lean into Kamigawa. I would like to check out Kamigawa. That seems like a fun place to be. It's industrial. You got high tech. I feel like I could, I don't know if people live stream there, but if any plane has it, that's it. You're just going to be working at a desk job in some big, corporation there. That's So yes, Mr. Umezawa, I understand the TPS reports are due by 9 a.m. I understand. Yeah. Anyway.
Nice.
Yeah,
probably. I like it. I think that's a good question. Let us know in the comments what plane you would like to reside on.
What plane would you like to live on? Yeah.
Let us know what you think of Foundations. Do you agree with our picks? Do you think there's cards that we missed that should be in Foundations that demand to be in that set for 5 years that are evergreen? What is good enough to be evergreen in this set? Let us know. Put it in the comments below, or shoot us a message on Discord. And do we have any questions? We don't have questions from the viewers.
I don't believe we've gotten any questions, or if we have, I haven't seen them. So apologies for that. If anyone has submitted questions, I will keep an eye out. Although we have been going pretty darn long. So yes, we will. I'll keep an eye out for those for next week. So go ahead and hop into our Discord, leave comments on the YouTube or in your podcast app of choice. You can also hit us up on Twitter at MagicJank. We'll keep an eye on those. And so, sounds good. Well, Damien, thank you so much for joining me. This was an absolute blast. And until next time, everybody, take it easy.
See ya.